In this lesson, we'll learn how to incorporate an automobile into our composition, which will add to the feel of abandonment. Okay, so in the last lesson, we left off with adding another pass of dirt and grime, as well as painting in some damage onto our building here. So you can see here I've shattered several of the windows, as well as added that additional dirt I mentioned. Now, I want to focus here kind of on this area right here. I've painted in and knocked in a rather large area of the windows right here. At the lower left portion of the building. Now, you may wonder, why did I choose that location to knock out in a big fashion like that? Well, I did that because of our compositional rule of thirds. If you remember, we talked about that earlier in this course. Let me hit Control semicolon and show you that that location actually falls on one of the key areas in our composition. So that's why I'm choosing to place an automobile there. Now, I'm also choosing to put it there because it's far enough in the distance that we can get away with a lot of things not necessarily being right in terms of the details of merging the two photographs together. So go ahead and check in your project files for me and look in the city folder of your images folder, and you'll find this image of a junkyard. So lots of different cars here. If you want to feel free to add more cars to your scene, have fun with that. We're not going to go overboard though, because the more cars we add, the closer those cars are to our camera, the more work we're going to have to spend on those cars to make them look like they really fit in the scene. So you may notice that this is a fairly well-lit day, so we've got some reflections on the cars to deal with as well. So we're going to take this station wagon right here. Let me just go ahead and grab my lasso tool. I'm not going to grab my polygonal lasso tool, but hold down the Shift key and hit L if you're still on that. And you can cycle through all the tools underneath it until you get to your normal lasso tool. And we're just going to lasso up this station wagon here. Doesn't need to be perfect, but I am going to try and get as little of that red car as possible. That red car is pretty bright, and it's going to be really easy to notice. So let me just subtract from my selection some, just to see if we can't get rid of some of that red hue. You can do that by holding down the Alt key. There's another red car up here. Let's see if we can't get rid of some of that as well. Take out that red chunk right there. All right, so this is looking pretty good. I may make another couple of refinements to my selection here, but like I said, it doesn't need to be perfect because we're going to end up shrinking this down quite a bit. So let's come in here now at this point, grab our Move tool, and just simply click and drag this over to our Lesson 8 Begin file here. So we'll just drop that in, and you can see it went in my Dirt, Decay, and Damage folder, which is where we left off in the previous lesson. And you can see here that we've got kind of a lot of this painted foliage on top of it. So let's hide that for just a moment here. We'll just come in and click on the eyeball next to that. And let's come in here and take our station wagon, and now it's oriented the wrong direction to have driven into that window. So we want to flip it horizontally first. We'll just come up to Edit and Transform, choose Flip Horizontal. And I tell you, let's come in here now and let's go ahead and free transform our station wagon by hitting Control T. We'll just grab that corner control and hold Shift and shrink it down. We're going to get it small enough to where it's believable inside that gap right there. Now that's still pretty large. We're going to kind of zoom in on that, get it shrunk down quite a bit here. Now we can come in here and drop the opacity if we need to make sure that that layer we're working on is grounded. So I know this road closed sign is sort of getting in the way, but I'm also using this door over here as sort of a point of reference for the size this station wagon needs to be. We all know how big a door is, a normal sized door, so we all know how big a car is. So imagine that door next to this car, so then you know how large to make your vehicle. We'll come in here and that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and hit Enter on that and bring the opacity back up. Now, obviously, this car, it doesn't fit. I mean, as a matter of fact, if we zoom out, that thing is an eyesore. It jumps out at us like like it doesn't belong in this image. So there's a few things we need to do to fix that. And one of those things is we're going to need to adjust the luminance levels of this vehicle because our highlights are just too bright and our shadows are really a little bit too dark. So I'm actually going to go ahead and free transform that again, and I'm going to rotate it a little bit and maybe just increase the size just a hair. Make it feel like maybe the front wheels have been flattened by going through the window. Okay, so at this point we can go ahead and name this station wagon. And let's go ahead and add an adjustment layer. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a brightness contrast adjustment layer. There we go. And let's see if we can't drop that contrast down. Now that's affecting everything around the station wagon. So let me go ahead and clip this layer to the station wagon layer so that it only affects the station wagon. And we're going to drag the contrast all the way down, and let's go ahead and take the brightness down as well. And if you need to, go ahead and zoom out and do this, because by doing that, it's going to help you to kind of look at everything around the station wagon and gauge if you've taken it down enough. So let's go ahead and close that out for right now. And let's see. We'll come in at this point, drag that down a little bit further. And let's go ahead and mask out a portion of the station wagon as well. So I'm going to go ahead and drop a layer mask onto that by clicking on this button down here. Grab my brush tool, and let's make sure we have a nice hard round brush. So let's choose this hard round opacity here and shrink that down some. So our wheel here is on top of the road closed sign. So I'm going to fix that really quickly just by dropping the opacity so I can see that. And it looks like we've got an element here as well. So we want to come in here and make sure we have black set as our foreground color. And we'll come in and bring back these elements. Now you want to make sure that the position of the vehicle is exactly where you want it before you do this. Otherwise you're just going to be masking out an area that you're going to have to change. Let me come in and hit the X so I can get a white color here and come in and sort of touch that area. So there we go. We've painted black and white into this mask to bring back a couple of these points in the road closed sign that we had previously hidden here. So we'll come in, make sure that we've got that in, and let's bring that opacity back up. All right, great. So at this point, zooming out on that, it still seems to pop out quite a bit. I'm not convinced, though, that it's not because the front end, it should be in shadow. So let's come in here and we'll drop in a new layer, but I want this to be on top of my brightness contrast. And you'll notice that it automatically clipped to our station wagon layer. That's a good thing, because if we're just using a paint layer like this, we'll go ahead and grab my brush again, and we'll use the same hard round opacity. If we paint on this layer with it clipped to the station wagon layer, like you see here, then it's basically going to limit the area we can paint and see. So if we painted like that, it's only going to be visible where there's opaque pixels on that station wagon layer. So let me undo that. We'll sample this color right here, and we'll start painting the front end of the station wagon into shadow. Now, I'm going to adjust the opacity of my brush at this point and drop it down to maybe somewhere around 30 or 40%. Because it seems like we're getting awful dark awful quick. So I'm going to erase that, and I'm going to paint that area over again. Thinking about how deep is the station wagon in the shadow. Now again, if our light source is in this top left corner, then this entire right side of the vehicle should be in shadow. So we'll come in here and just give us a kind of a pass over that side of the vehicle. Darken that up quite a bit. I'm going to bring in that shadow on the top here some more. I'm going to almost completely hide the front end of it. Now, there's just one thing bothering me here, and that's that red car. I can still see through the windows here. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to mask that out. Making sure that I have black as my foreground color. And let's go ahead and bump the opacity back up. So my hard round brush is at full effect here. There we go. I'm going to get rid of that red. All right, great. A little bit of red there that shouldn't be there. Okay, that's looking better already. So the next thing we need to do to make this vehicle fit into its location is probably adjust the saturation just a little bit. Now, as things get further away from our eye, there's things in the air that prevent us from seeing colors at full saturation. So things tend to get more desaturated the further away they get. So let's come in and add a hue saturation adjustment layer here, and see if we can't bump the saturation down just a bit. Now, I'm specifically looking at those tail lights here. Those seem awful bright to me. All right, great. That's already starting to look a lot better, a lot more realistic. I might have taken that a little bit too far, but at this point, the next really and final step to make this station wagon look like it fits into this environment a little bit better is to come in and work on kind of the grounding shadow. You can see we brought a shadow over from the original image, which is great, but it doesn't quite feel right. So let's come in here and we'll just kind of use our hard round opacity brush again. And I'm going to sample this dark color here. We're going to start bringing in a shadow here. Now you'll notice that as I painted right there, nothing happened, no shadow. Remember, this layer is clipped to the station wagon, so pixels that I paint there are not going to show up. If we wanted to unclip that, we could hold down the Alt key and click between the two layers, and then we could unclip that layer. So really, I think that's okay. We can go ahead and unclip that safely at this point. So let me come in here and erase that shadow back a bit. And let's come in and I'll right click with my brush tool active. I'm going to soften that brush up just a little bit here. Increase the size. Right about there should work. Actually, that sign is still being covered a little bit right in there. There we go. We'll just come in here and continue kind of working that ground shadow, that contact shadow. And I'm going to kind of just blend this in just by sampling and painting a little bit around, bringing that shadow out a little bit further if we need to. Come in and kind of clean this edge up. All right, so this station wagon is starting to feel like it actually lives in its current location, and maybe somebody has been looting out of the back of it and has maybe taken some of the belongings that maybe the original owners had back there. So I think a lot of times what can help as you're doing a photo manipulation even like this is to kind of think about the backstory of the different elements that you've added here. So looking at that, that's starting to feel like it really belongs there. So I may touch that up a little bit in between lessons. I think another thing that this particular element could use is something we have actually hidden, which is some of this plant life. So you can see here that a little bit of it has gotten onto the station wagon from just the original pass I did. So I may add some plant life to the station wagon as well to kind of integrate it a little bit more into this new environment we're creating. So I'll go ahead and handle that in between lessons. But, you know, at this point, we spent a lot of time working on this building. Let's go ahead and branch out a little bit. Let's start advancing in our composition. Now, we've got this big expanse of mid-ground area here that really has nothing in it. And in our sketch, at the beginning, our notes, we talked about bringing in some larger clumps of vegetation in a couple areas. So we'll get started doing that in the next lesson.